Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Moving Accounts Payable into the Future with Supplier Portals, brought to you by IOFM and sponsored by iPayables. We have a few housekeeping notes to go over before we get started. If you have any technical questions or issues using the WebEx platform, please use the chat box and I will respond right away. If you have any issues with audio, please click on the phone icon above the chat window to receive the teleconference info. For those that do call in, to ensure call quality, everyone's lines have been muted. If you happen to get disconnected, you can log on again using the instructions provided in your webinar confirmation email. If you continue to experience difficulty, please email webinars@iofm.com and we will respond as soon as we can. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation. Please type your questions into the chat box and hit send to submit them. At the end of the presentation, we will have our presenters answer these questions. We will also have 4 polling questions during the webinar. A pop-up box will appear when we run each poll. Please choose from the multiple choice answers and hit submit. We'd love to have your participation and insight. And this webinar will be recorded and you'll receive a thank you email with the on-demand materials within 2 business days. With that out of the way, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. First, we will have Mark Brousseau, President of Brousseau and Associates. Over the past 26 years, Mark has established himself as a thought leader on accounts payable, accounts receivable, payments, and document automation. A popular speaker at industry conferences and on webinars and podcasts, Mark advises prominent end users and solutions and service providers on how to use automation to improve document and payment-driven business processes. Mark has chaired numerous educational conferences and has served on several industry committees and boards. He resides in Center City, Philadelphia with his wife and 3 sons. We will also hear from Brian Messer, Enterprise Account Executive at iPayables. Brian is responsible for working with and understanding enterprise organizations' needs and recommending solutions that deliver outcomes. Prior to joining iPayables, for nearly the last decade, Brian has worked to help organizations evaluate and make decisions around their business with the goal of driving outcomes. Brian has a Bachelor's of Science in Professional Sales from Weber State University. And at this time, I would like to welcome our speakers and hand the webinar off to Mark.
Thank you so much, Jovi, and thank you all for joining us today. Today, organizations are asking for accounts payable departments to do more with less. They're trying to find ways to improve efficiency, staff productivity, bring in costs. This is good measures in good times as well as bad. One of the ways that organizations can achieve these objectives is through AP automation. The benefits of AP automation don't need to be sold to most AP leaders these days, but the question that most AP leaders might still have is, what's the best approach for automation? And that's the focus of today's webinar. We're going to show you how one technology, supplier portals, might help your organization achieve the goals that it's after. Before we do all that, we want to start with a poll question, which is about to be displayed on your screen. We want to know, what is your biggest accounts payable challenge? What is your department's current biggest accounts payable challenge? Is it invoice payment approvals are taking too long? Is it that you've got too many exceptions? Is it too many paper invoices? Is it too many manual B2B payments? Or is it late supplier payments? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. So Brian, when you're talking to AP leaders these days, what do they tell you is keeping them up at night?
Oh, Mark, it's probably a little bit of all of what you're seeing on the screen here, but I think it's still leaders trying to move away from manual processes, weed out any straggling paper, and reduce the time to approve and get things paid on time. I know that's maybe not too specific, but there's a lot to unpack within that.
How have the pressures that AP leaders are facing changed since the start of the pandemic?
Oh, well, I think that there are a lot of moving parts with staffing. There's been, I guess, an increase in limited visibility with folks working from home, and with fluctuations now as the current economic climate is more uncertain. I think that there's additional pressure and stress on teams to get things done with less, like you were mentioning before.
There's no question that AP departments have accelerated their move to automation since the start of the pandemic. Let's face it, Brian, it's hard to adapt paper and manual processes to a remote or hybrid work environment. The question is are AP leaders taking their foot off the accelerator, Brian, or are they pushing ahead now that it appears the pandemic is loosening up a little bit?
I think that there's probably some paralysis by analysis, if you will, and that's hopefully what we'll address and unpack a little more today. Is that there's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot that can be done without too much disruption, and it's time to do something and future-proof organizations before the next hopefully not global pandemic, my goodness, but before the next wave of challenge.
That's right. We asked our attendees, what is your biggest accounts payable challenge these days? 37% of our attendees, Brian, said that invoice and payment approvals are taking too long. Another 33% of our attendees noted that they have a high percentage of exceptions. Now, I have to be honest, this was a bit of a trick question, Brian, in that these first two responses are really go hand in hand, right? They both speak to the length of time it takes to get invoices approved and payments out the door. Another 13% of our attendees said they have too many late supplier payments. Also talking about speed, 11% said they have too many manual B2B payments, and 6% said they've got too much paper. Okay, so we know from IOFM data, Brian, that more than 70% of all AP departments have some sort of invoice processing or supplier payments technology. More than 70%. Now, that's not to say they have end-to-end technology. They have something. Maybe it's some document imaging, maybe some data capture, maybe a portal for some of their suppliers. And yet, despite that staggeringly high number of departments that have some technology, clearly it's not enough, Brian. Why do you reckon that is?
Um, I think it's finding, I guess, assessing the size of your department, the size of your company, and really meeting suppliers where they are and finding a supplier centric method that's going to reduce exceptions on the front end by forcing better accuracy early in the process, and just making sure that we're achieving true automation. It's staggering the number of folks that I chat with. I'm not surprised to see A and B as the responses here, because of all the groups that I chat with, like you said, nearly everyone has some kind of technology in place, but it's most often that as we get into discovery and conversation, they're still touching every invoice. There's still some paper out there, and there's lots of manual process involved with getting invoices through and ready to pay. And it's going to become a more and more complex issue to resolve.
You know what, Brian, they did such a great job with that poll question. Let's do one more. This time we want to know, what is a supplier portal to you? What do you think of when you think of a supplier portal? Is it a portal for my suppliers to submit invoices? Is it a portal to register and verify suppliers? Is it a portal to manage supplier and spend reports? Or is it some combination of all of the above? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed in your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. And this question really speaks to a lot of the confusion around supplier portals, Brian, and that depending on who you talk to, they have a significantly different definition of what a portal is. In fact, many vendors can't even agree on what it is a supplier portal ought to do. So help clear this all up, Brian. What is a supplier portal in the eyes of iPayables?
Yeah, in the eyes of iPayables, it is, I guess, not to give away the answer here. It is a combination of the above, and should be able to drive efficiency, better, an increase of control, and overall better visibility throughout each of the items that you're seeing here as questions. But that's the way we see it, and I will present a little bit of why here. I'm excited to explain and share.
So when our attendees are thinking about the challenges they face today, maybe it's the speed at which they can approve invoices or resolving those exceptions or even eliminating paper processes, how should they view a supplier portal as part of that answer? Is it an enabling technology? Is it in and of itself a solution? Is it something else?
That's a great question, Mark, and I think that it's a little bit of both in that it's an enabling technology for your suppliers to put some onus on suppliers rather, and in getting better information from them, more accurate information. And then it's a solution in that it's forcing some better accuracy earlier in the process, and then automating a lot of the exceptions later. And really what we're noticing is whether it's our tool or others, the marketplace talks a lot about workflow for approval of invoices. But what we're seeing and what we validated in the previous poll question is that there's a high number of exceptions occurring. And so really there's kind of this two part or two, I guess, dual requirement of workflow for approval and workflow for exception automation, that we want to present exceptions to the right people for the right reasons at the right time so that those can be resolved. And if the tool can do a lot of that heavy lifting, then some really great things happen.
So hold the phone here, Brian. You're suggesting that a supplier portal can be an on-ramp, if you will, to a workflow to accelerate some of these invoice approvals and payments. Is that what you're saying here?
Yeah, invoice approvals, invoice exceptions, so that invoices get paid on time.
We asked our attendees, what is a supplier portal to use? 7% of our attendees believe that a portal, first and foremost, is a way to register and verify suppliers. 4% of our attendees believe, first and foremost, a portal is a way for suppliers to submit their invoices. 2% of our attendees believe that it's a way to manage supplier and spend reports. 69% of our attendees, more than 2/3, Brian, believe that a supplier portal is some combination of the above. So now you can tell us, Brian, how it is that a supplier portal can help solve some of these ills that our attendees say are they're suffering from in their accounts payable departments.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm excited to do exactly that. And so as we had said, that the title, if you will, of today's webinar is Moving Accounts Payable into the Future with Supplier Portals. And with the rise of more tech savvy, automation demanding workforce, the future of successful AP departments will rely on improved automation throughout the process. Improved control, increased visibility, and really unparalleled efficiency is accomplished in part through advancing technologies, including the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning throughout your process. But as a supplier portal can and should play a key role in improving and taking us into the future of better automation and therefore better results. And so this is a cheesy example, Mark, but we'll land here for just a moment. It is time to move forward, and there have been limited experiences in my life where I've gone to the mall or somewhere and the escalator is not moving, and I've never actually encountered someone on a broken escalator waiting for the technician to come and to save them from being trapped on the escalator, right? It's pretty obvious that we can move forward. But I do resonate with and understand and empathize with some of the uncertainty and I guess fear, if you will, that exists with implementing a solution like a supplier portal, whether that's in tandem with other solutions or otherwise. But at iPayables, we really feel that moving forward and getting in and getting your feet wet and trying to do something will result in some really great results. And we'll talk a little bit about what's important from an evaluation standpoint. and how to look for a supplier portal that will fit your needs. But Mark, react to this. Have you ever been on a broken escalator, or maybe a pet peeve is standing on the escalator rather than it allowing us and enabling us to go faster?
Yeah, type A personalities like me, we cannot stand still on escalators or those conveyor belts at the airport. So if you're one of those people who stands on the airport conveyor belt and with your luggage in hand and blocks my path, expect to hear me grumbling behind you.
You'll hear from Mark. Watch out for Mark. uh,
Exactly.
and yeah, the time is now, and a thought here is, and I guess to the hope is to calm some of the uncertainty or fear with moving forward, and that's this. There's this quote from Bill Gates that we often reference. The first rule of any technology used in a business is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the efficiency. The second is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. And really, implementing new technology is in some ways a great opportunity to identify, and rather than looking at this and saying, oh no, my process is inefficient, and therefore automation is going to magnify the inefficiency, and a true and a proper implementation of a supplier portal rather should help us identify inefficiencies that we can improve and that we can adjust, and whether that's workflow for approvals or workflow for exception automation, or a combination of things, being able to identify, oh, let's think about this critically and let's find a best practice that's going to move us forward into true automation because of what the tool can do that we haven't been able to do as a result of not having something in place. Thoughts there, Mark?
No, you're exactly right.
Good. Good. Well, let's chat then for a moment here about what a supplier portal is in greater detail, if you will. Jump to the next slide here. Unlike traditional solutions such as OCR, portals should automate more than just the capture portion of the invoice process. It should do really a combination of everything. Before a supplier can even submit an invoice, it should require that it pass edits put in place by your accounts payable team. If there's a purchase order attached to the invoice, for example, this could include that the invoice is not able to move forward unless it matches up front, or as a way of reducing exceptions. Maybe we have subsequent exception automation rules in place, and a supplier portal should be capable of that. But with validations and the supplier input, business units and things like that are derived automatically. Internal controls are enforced, and the tribal knowledge, if you will, that exists within the AP team is transformed into programmed validations and guidelines for the tool, or like the rails for the invoice to travel on as it's being captured, so that it's approved, it's captured accurately, it's approved efficiently, and it's ready to pay on time. And so here's kind of a summary of some of the things that supplier portals should be able to accommodate.
One of the biggest changes I've seen over the
Yeah, go ahead.
past couple of years in terms of automation, Brian, is a shift in thinking, right? We're getting away from these piecemeal approaches to automation where maybe we automated supplier onboarding or part of invoice processing or maybe supplier payments. And today organizations are saying, well, that's not going to get us to where we want to go, right? Where we want to go is operate in a continuous process improvement loop. And that's elusive for most organizations. And that's really because of this way we've gone about automating. So what I like about a supplier portal is it really is that first step toward achieving what I'll call end-to-end automation. I'm doing air quotes. You all can't see that, but end-to-end automation. And this speaks to that, right? From the word go, now you have what you're calling those programmatic tools now to be able to enforce your business rules, to ensure everything's done the way your organization wants, ensure separation of duties, have chain of custody, create those audit trails, have visibility across the process. The list goes on and on. But I think that's the power of a supplier portal. The one thing I'll caution folks listening in today is that while this list is impressive, you got to be careful that you're comparing apples to apples, right? A lot of vendors purport to have supplier portals, and quite frankly, they do only part of this. And so you need to make sure that the portal you're looking at truly is a conduit for end-to-end automation and not just a tool for one piece of the AP puzzle, or else you're going to end up right back where you started with a piecemeal solution. You agree with that, Brian?
Oh, what a great distinction there, Mark, and thank you for clarifying or reminding to bring that to our attention. The piecemeal strategy oftentimes will fall short or be really cumbersome for AP or IT teams to manage RPAs or whatever else may folks may be looking at. And then yeah, you're absolutely right. Not all solutions will be able to accommodate all of these. And then you hit it right on the head. You're back right where you started with a solution that's not getting you all, just maybe not quite all the way there. Excellent. Let's chat for a moment then about some of the challenges that we see as we're going through and as we're chatting with different groups. So, a lot of AP personnel we find are still fairly unfamiliar with the supplier portal, and that can result in a lack of trust. Oftentimes groups will say, I got to see it to believe it, and I don't fault them for that at all. But there's some uncertainty and some hesitance in that, some disbelief. In these circumstances, the AP team probably, they're going to end up stopping the invoice every step of the way. They're maybe double checking and doing manual or continued manual double checking and validations of the information. And frankly, this just results in slowing down the process, reducing straight through processing. And in the end, you're not automated because you're still touching the invoices. You're still, intercepting them at different points and ensuring that things are accurate rather than trusting that the process is going to be effective. Unfortunately, many available portals are also less user-friendly and difficult to integrate with existing systems. And so maybe they don't play well with other systems in the space. But due to this unfortunate truth, the lack of faith in a portal is the biggest drawback. The portal should be included in the automation solution without additional charge to the suppliers is another big one. But even if you implement and say you only got 50% of suppliers to start using it, that's still 50% going straight through, and you're having to do a lot less effort to get that number of invoices there. And it's always, I'll always ask, it maybe sounds like a silly question, but what are the things that late at night or let's say at the water cooler, you're standing around with coworkers, what are the things that you're complaining that you never have time to get to? Or, you get home and you're having dinner with your partner or significant other, and you're sharing, oh, there's so much that I could do if I wasn't bogged down with the invoice process. And that's really where the supplier portal could and should do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. But what maybe of these is most significant to you, Mark, or what are you seeing as you're chatting with groups or getting information from the marketplace?
Brian, I think a lot of portal efforts are doomed to failure because departments simply choose solutions that are too hard to use or too expensive to use for internal and external parties. And you really spoke to these. They're too complicated for your internal stakeholders. They make it difficult to get at the information you need to be able to resolve exceptions or to collaborate with coworkers. Maybe for suppliers, they don't offer the tools they need to make it easy for them to submit their invoices. Maybe they have onerous charges that make it cost prohibitive for certain suppliers. I hear all the time, how do we sell portals to smaller suppliers? Well, heck, in my mind, a portal is ideal for the long tail because you have tools that allow them to generate invoices through web forms and through other mechanisms right there and built into the portal. So for mom and pop suppliers, to me, a portal is an ideal solution if it isn't complicated and expensive. So I think, Brian, one of the things that I go back to is make sure the portal you're looking at serves internal and external constituents. Put yourself in the shoes of a frontline worker. Put yourself in the shoes of a supplier. Is this something they're really going to want to use?
Yeah, yeah, that's excellent. Thank you, Mark. And if we're charging suppliers, say goodbye to leverage and capturing early pay discounts or other things by passing along some of those charges. It really can complicate other initiatives that we may be trying to pursue. Well, so the interesting thing as we look at the space here is we kind of look through these results, and when talking about automation, it is important to remember that you don't have to start from ground zero. And wherever you are in the process of automation today, a high level supplier portal can be added on to existing automation. It doesn't have to change all of workflow or invoice process, and some portals may be more modular than others in working with existing systems, or maybe there's some workflow in the ERP. But it's clear that a majority of AP departments, even those who do have automation, plan on and recognize the need to continue to improve that process through further automation. And that I'm tickled pink to know that that's true. And we see that within the marketplace, and even really large organizations with some great tools in place are still experiencing friction that they recognize needs to be resolved.
Yeah, we just did a study at IOFM, Brian, trying to understand how it is that AP practitioners spend their day. And we have a lot of work to do as an industry here. 40% of AP practitioners who we surveyed, and it was hundreds of them who we surveyed, say that most of their workday is wasted on manual tests. 40% of AP practitioners say that most of their day is wasted on manual tests. Things like keying invoice data and pushing around paper and emails and chasing down information, and of course, fixing errors and mistakes. As startling as that is, listen to this. 6% of those people we surveyed said their entire day is spent on manual tests. So they have no time for those value-added tasks that you were talking about at the water cooler, Brian.
Oh
And
my
and
goodness.
when you think about all of this, it really speaks to the opportunity for automation, because what we also found was that 30% of AP practitioners believe that 50% or more of all of these manual repetitive tasks could be eliminated through automation. And when we asked AP pros, so what is it you want us to eliminate? What would the task be that you'd like to get rid of? Well, first and foremost, keying data, right? Manually entering header and line item data. That's the number one thing that AP professionals would like to eliminate for their workday. We can't see you all out there right now, but I know there's a bunch of you knowingly nodding your heads right now. And that's no
I'm nodding,
surprise.
Mark.
That's no surprise, right? We waste a lot of time on it, and we know there's a lot of pressure, because if we miskey one piece of data, well, that could cause some big problems downstream. But that's not the only thing, right? It's not just about keying data, right? It would be things like routing invoices, which is hard these days. Now that we're working remotely, we can't stuff things into an inner office envelope anymore. We've got to figure out who the purchaser is and make sure that email gets to them. Maybe it's resolving invoice exceptions. Responding to supplier inquiries was the fourth biggest task that AP professionals would like to eliminate. And then printing and mailing checks. This is still a thing. Yeah, I guess so. So these are the things that AP pros would like to get rid of, according to IOFM's data. Now, you might think, well, what does this mean in the big picture, right? Well, if you're trying to attract staff, like Brian was talking about before, I want you to consider this. 46% of the AP practitioners who IOFM surveyed said it's unlikely or extremely unlikely that they'd consider working for another AP department that hasn't already automated. So when you're trying to attract these AP folks, you got to realize your own people probably aren't happy with those manual tasks, and the prospective job candidates aren't going to be either. And this is exactly what a portal does for you, right? It eliminates all of these tasks that your AP practitioners, your frontline staff say they'd like to eliminate from their day.
Awesome. Terrific statistics there, Mark. And I think kind of just drawing this back to a point is 59 right here on the slide, 59% of businesses paid a supplier late during COVID because of operational issues. And that's only magnified when someone's out of office for COVID, or maternity leave comes up, or someone's ready to retire, and now we're trying to replace staff, and it's just we're we're uh, we're we're digging the hole deeper and deeper. They say the first rule if you find yourself in a hole is stop digging. So get on the escalator and start running is what we're trying to say.
Now you're talking.
Awesome. So this next piece, how to improve a supplier portal solution. Here are some main, I guess, areas of criteria to consider. And this is really to say whether or not the solution you're working with is the right size for your company. Maybe we start there. If you process less than 1,000 invoices each month, you probably don't need a highly flexible, highly configurable solution. If you find yourself in that neighborhood of 5,000 invoices plus per month, it becomes more and more important that the solution you're working with is equipped with all the functionality and a high level of flexibility to make sure that your company's process runs as smooth and efficient as possible. And the caveat there is that it runs smooth and efficient, and that you're saving money. When looking at supplier portals specifically, look at how many of your suppliers are using the portal and how they feel about it. Has the has the solution provider assisted in onboarding and training those suppliers? Are they helping massage some of the concerns? Are they helping and doing some of the outreach for onboarding? That no AP person that I've ever encountered has time to now help a supplier, figure out how to get signed up on a supplier or on a portal, or go through the process of figuring out how to submit an invoice. And so how is your provider of a supplier portal today helping alleviate so that effort isn't falling entirely on you? You're busy enough as it is. And especially if your portal isn't helping you achieve true automation. And so putting some of that back on the provider of your portal, and really challenging them to be a partner in this, is something that is an area to consider for sure. And then this brings up the issue of the overall cost. As we talk about saving money, is the solution that you have cost effective? It's true that there's an upfront cost with automating your department, no doubt. The decision to automate should end up saving your department money, not costing it more. And the metric that we generally talk about is the cost to process an invoice. And if you have an idea of that today, you're further along than some departments, or most departments that I encounter. But being able to implement a good automated solution should result in an overall reduction in cost to process invoices and a positive ROI that leadership should be excited about. And it should result in good executive sponsorship of an initiative to implement or an initiative to improve. Any thoughts there, Mark, or anything that you would add?
Well, you really hit the nail on the head in terms of tracking metrics. We know 40% of all IOFM members don't track any metrics in their AP departments, 40%. And when you're trying to cost justify a solution, whether it's a supplier portal or any other AP technology, it's going to be hard to be able to build a business case and track your progress if you don't have a baseline against which to measure. So if you do one thing today, I want you to make sure that you're tracking metrics. And we're not here to tell you what the right ones are. I mean, there's some pointers we could give you, but track whatever's important to your department. And then you can use that when you're talking to Brian or other vendors about automating your department, when you're trying to build that business case, and then over time tracking your progress. Now you have something to go back to senior management with. It's really hard to be able to get a business case sold if you don't have good metrics against which to measure.
Good. Yeah. If we have a baseline understanding of where we are today and where we think or where we project we could go, that definitely strengthens that business case and gets the escalator moving faster. Helps us get up to the next level, which is
Indeed.
Good. Good. Mark, maybe I'm gonna skip to the next slide here, but I feel like I'm talking a lot as we get into the slides. What are you seeing? I'm going to put these here not as a cheat sheet because I'm sure that you know all of these, but what are you seeing as the main benefits to suppliers of using a portal? And And how really should organizations be framing this up as a value add to suppliers and not a detriment? I think this is probably the number one objection that I run into as we start talking about portal submission is I inevitably, even with cameras off, I can see the eyes roll and people think and say, man, my suppliers just, I don't think they're going to do this. And
Yeah, we need to put
how do
ourselves
we
in the
frame it up as
shoes.
value?
You're right, Brian. We need to put ourselves in the shoes of our suppliers when we're looking at any AP automation solution. And when we talk to suppliers through IOFM, what we hear from them is they've got cash crunch too, right? They're trying to understand how they can manage their cash flow. And to do that, they want to know, well, when am I going to get paid? So first and foremost, a supplier wants to know the basics, right? Did you receive my invoice? Where is my invoice in the process? When am I going to get paid? Is there any problem with my payment that I should be aware of that I can take proactive action on? Do you need any information from me in order to make sure that I'm payable? So, in other words, do you have the tax documents you need from me in order to cut that check to me or electronic payment, hopefully? Do you need any certifications on file? The ones on file that you have, are they out of date and you need me to submit something fresh? Is there any offers for early payment discounts that I should be aware of, and how can those be communicated to me? So when you think of what it is a supplier's after, really it's understanding where their cash flow stands. And a portal does this better than any other tool, right? Today, you're probably getting more calls and emails from suppliers about where things stand in the process. Offload that, put it onto the backs of a portal, and then use that portal to collect the information you need to get a supplier payable. If you do that, you're going to find suppliers will be enthusiastic supporters of a portal initiative, right? They know when they're going to get paid, and they know that they can get paid sooner because you'll have all the information you need from them to make that happen.
Excellent. I don't know that I have anything to add to that, Mark. You did a great job of summarizing that. And so the next question then is what are the benefits of a supplier portal for you in AP? And hopefully we've addressed some of these already, but we chatted in the beginning and there was a small number of folks who were still wanting to eliminate some paper, but that increase in the control and visibility and getting payments on time and improving approval and exception workflow and really reducing the number of exceptions that are occurring. This is really what a supplier portal will do for you. For those listening, if you're in AP, or for those listening who are in finance, leadership, this is what a supplier does for you or for your team, and really frees up so that teams can focus on higher value opportunity tasks than the mundanity of invoice processing, especially in a manual environment, and really sets teams up to meet the metrics and what they're trying to do, and future proofs them, like we talked in the beginning, from or enabling them to do more with less as the economy and other situations are complicated. Hopefully we've addressed this in detail. Is there anything that you'd add to that, Mark?
No, I think really when you look at it at Supplier Portal, any other AP automation, our benchmark data tells us there's five things it does, right? AP automation moves the needle in five areas: reduces invoice processing costs, improves employee productivity, the number of invoices you can process per full-time equivalent. It accelerates your cycle times. It helps you capture more early payment discounts, and it helps you reduce the possibility of duplicate payments and other errors. So if those would be five tenets, if you will, of a business case for a portal or any other AP automation solution.
Good. And who doesn't want that, right?
There you go.
Well, let's go to our next poll question then.
Indeed, which is about to be displayed on your screen. This time we want to know, if you don't have a supplier portal, well, why the devil not? Is it because of the perceived added cost? Is it that you don't believe your suppliers will adopt it? Do you believe that a portal won't integrate with your existing technology, your ERP, your accounting software, or some other legacy system? Are you just unfamiliar with a portal, not sure why you need one? Or do you already use a portal? take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed in your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. Brian, what's the number one reason that folks don't deploy a supplier portal?
That's a good question. I think that there's some unfamiliarity with what the product can do. There's some, like we talked about before, some lack of faith in the results that will be delivered. And there's definitely the added cost. And the old adage of sharpening the saw is sometimes done as we look at priorities and different initiatives. Oftentimes we'll talk with groups who are explaining that leadership is going to prioritize something that saves money last. They want to prioritize things that make money, and that can be, I think, disappointing for AP and for AP leadership to hear. And really, if instead we were helping and enabling them to do more with less, and capture more benefits and efficiencies, some really great things happen.
We asked our attendees, if you don't have a supplier portal, why not? 23% of our attendees say they're unfamiliar with supplier portals. Hopefully today's webinar is a first step toward clearing that all up. 15% of our attendees are concerned about the perceived added cost of a portal. 14% of our attendees are afraid that a portal won't integrate with their legacy systems. And 8% of our attendees believe that their suppliers won't use one. So it looks like confusion about the technology is the number one thing holding folks back from deploying a supplier portal. So Brian, talk a little bit more about what suppliers want, the need and expect from a portal, and how the technology helps deliver all that.
Good. Yeah, I think these are interesting results. I think this was a great poll question, and really let's dive into just that. What do suppliers expect, and how do we drive and improve some cost? But maybe just a point. I digress. I'm getting ahead of myself. Whatever your response to the previous question was, move up the escalator. And if it's learning more about products, I encourage folks to do that. If it's worried about unwillingness of suppliers, we'll talk about that now, or won't integrate with existing solutions. It could be worth or time for some research. And if added cost is a worry, then it may be time to sit down with some metrics and really put pen to paper and see if it's not something that a business case couldn't be built around. But in terms of what suppliers want, need, and expect from a supplier portal, we'll talk here in a moment in the next slide about it being free to use. But this is a quick summary of the things that they're going to really require. And I think visibility is at the top of the list, the user experience and access, having a provider, hopefully the provider of the portal, provide the onboarding support and the product support so that your AP team isn't getting bogged down with additional supplier inquiry that's not even about invoices anymore, and it's about how to use this new technology. Hopefully that's not what happens, or what's occurring. But really, when I was young and when I would ask my parents if I could do something and they said no, and I wanted a reason and they said just because, that was frustrating. But when we talk about why supplier portals need to be free for suppliers, it's almost a little bit of that just because. It really does need to be free for suppliers in order to ensure that you're getting the highest level of adoption of that portal, that suppliers are really engaging and checking and being active participants in the invoicing process, and moving validations up front, and in checking and communicating clearly about what's going on, asking questions throughout the process, that they're engaging with, and offering discounts to be paid earlier, and that just overall the process is being simplified. Those are some I guess reasons for why the portal should be free to suppliers, and hopefully that's a better explanation than just because. So I think a good next poll question, maybe this is a way to summarize, is this, and I'll let you take it away there, Mark.
Yeah, if you have a supplier portal, Has it delivered the benefits that you thought it would? If you have a supplier portal, if you're one of the 25% of our attendees who said you already have a portal, has it delivered the benefits you thought it would? Yes, no, you're still working on achieving those benefits, or you don't have a portal. Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed in your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. How long should it take to achieve benefits on a supplier portal, Brian? I know there's a lot of concern these days about long, complicated, and risky automation projects. Folks are looking for quick return on their projects in these uncertain economic times. Is a portal one of those types of technologies?
It should deliver benefits and return on the initial investment quickly. And I think it's tough to say exactly when, but I think some of the things in having a strategy to get suppliers to onboard, hopefully a lot of that lift, not to beat a dead horse at this point, but hopefully the majority of that effort is done by the provider. If it's a free to use portal, and if it's user friendly and accessible, and it's really delivering the benefits that we talked about, if they're really getting improved visibility, and we can communicate a lot of those benefits to the suppliers, then absolutely you should see a positive return on investment. You should put your stamp of approval on that kind of initiative and confidently get on that escalator and run right up the stairs, because it should be something that you can be proud of. These are initiatives that we see as folks are implementing them. Folks are desperate to work in AP departments, is some of the feedback that we're receiving after implementation, and they're excited to be part of the movement and the improvement that the automation is delivering.
Among our attendees who have a supplier portal, 24% say they're still working on achieving the benefits of the technology. 6% say they have not achieved the benefits they thought they would. 5% said they have. So in many cases, it looks like organizations are still working on getting their ROI. And since we don't know how recently folks have deployed these technologies, that's not necessarily a good thing, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, Brian. And based on the context that you just gave us, I think that the jury's out for these folks. But there's no question that a portal can deliver tremendous benefits. So tell us a little bit about a supplier survey that iPayables recently did to find out some of the benefits that the technology provides to suppliers.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. We conducted a survey recently of suppliers of our clients using our supplier portal. It was over 800 suppliers who responded over about a 6-week period. And we found the following to be, great data points and things that we're excited about, and that our clients obviously are excited about. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being difficult and 10 being very easy, how easy is it to use the portal? And we're of course thrilled to hear that there's a resounding it's easy to use. Have you been able to resolve an issue faster now that you can see the status of an invoice? A large majority of folks saying yes, they're able to resolve those issues faster. And likewise, and I think that this one's important because it can create some friction interdepartmentally with buyers and procurement. Are folks able to resolve a PO match exception faster using the portal than if they were to use or go through the old process with the customer's payables group? And obviously, an overwhelming percentage of folks agree that that's the case. And then just to, I guess, reemphasize the point that we've been making here, is that on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it the portal is free? And the results speak for themselves there. And for folks out there with portal and that are still working on improving results, hopefully the portal is free to suppliers. And if not, then maybe this is an indication of a quick way to make an improvement. I moved through those quick. Mark, are there any questions or comments on those that you have?
No, this isn't surprising. It's great confirmation of the business case here for a portal.
Good. So the last one that I wanted to touch on here, we talk about, and sometimes folks, I think you'd mentioned earlier, Mark, is sometimes folks think about the functionality that a portal can provide as being, or the potential of them being a little disjointed. We'll talk about workflow, we'll talk about visibility, we'll talk about, the portal as a piece of that. And really, we hope and we encourage AP and finance leadership to look for a portal that really will deliver all of these solutions in one, where you're getting all of the value with one relationship and the support that can be provided in that instance. And just a brief point then here on who we are as iPayables. We focus on supplier portals with high flexibility and functionality throughout the process. We focus heavily on compliance and really meeting the needs of enterprise organizations needing to automate their AP environments. And we're maybe a little unique in the space in that we offer supplier adoption for all of our clients. We don't charge additional for that. And we really do a lot of the heavy lifting and effort in helping provide support ongoing and doing the major lift up front and getting suppliers to adopt one of the many methods that we have for suppliers to submit invoices via, or true e-invoices via our portal. And, a lot of our customers are seeing some really great results. And I don't want to talk too much or belabor the point here, especially as we're coming up on time, and I want to leave time for some Q&A, but we have some amazing results within groups across industries who are seeing reduced time to pay. They're capturing grundles of discounts in addition, over and above what they were doing before, and some great things there. But really kind of this last and parting point that I would encourage is that gone are the days of standing on the escalator, and hopefully paralysis by analysis is in our past. And we encourage that folks out there, those still working on getting their supplier portal, we're cheering and rooting for you. And if you're not getting what you need, or if you don't have a portal in place today, we'd love to chat.
Please don't stand on the escalators. That brings us to the Q&A portion of this webinar. If you haven't already submitted your question for Brian, or if you've thought of another question, go ahead, use the chat tool on your screen to submit them to me now. We'll answer as many questions as time allows. And Brian, we have a lot of questions already in the queue. Our first question up is from Kara. She wants to know, so how do solutions like yours compare to those from ERP solutions providers?
That's a great question. And I guess a misconception. In fact, just the other day, I had a conversation with a group, and we talked through all of the things that we could do. And they said, well, at the end, they said, I just really don't know that my IT team is going to be willing to displace our ERP. And I went, whoa, that's that's not what we do. We look to interface with the ERP, if you will, as a middleware between your suppliers and the ERP, where processing of invoices can happen in an efficient and productive way. But to, I guess, summarize the differences between the ERP, and oftentimes they'll offer some workflow. What we find is that our solution, or a portal solution, should have a more robust workflow, automated workflow, and exception automation workflow, as well as the ability to capture invoices that suppliers can submit those. They can be reviewed, and errors are brought to the attention of the right folks at the right time for the right reasons. And then oftentimes it's either a matter of, depending on which portal you're chatting with, it's either pushing a payment file into the ERP and then it's ready for review and payment, or, and hopefully, also automating the payment of those, and you're no longer having to manually cut and send checks, but it's able to accommodate the payment automation piece as well. Hopefully that answers the question, Mark.
If not, Kara can send you a note and ask for clarification. Next question up is from Lee. Lee wants to know, what types of rules can an AP team set up in the portal? In other words, how much validation can occur in the portal?
That's a great question. And so in terms of validation rules, there are things like, if a certain business unit is selected or automatically defaulted based on information, then maybe we limit the number of GL available accounts that can be coded. If a certain vendor or vendor type is identified, then maybe we want to downstream limit the number of available options for a supplier, as well as just the simple action of flipping PO data onto the invoice screen for a supplier as they're submitting an invoice, so that we're force validating good information. We're forcing the correct terms based on that supplier, so they're not able to choose whatever they want. Or one that I find all the time, and Mark, maybe this is just me, is enforcing an accurate invoice date, that they can't just
Mhm.
select any invoice date that they like, and maybe we want to have some validation or a rule in place that forces that. And then in terms of workflow for approval and workflow for exception automation, to put it, I guess, briefly, is anything that comes in on the invoice, we can create rules for workflow or rules for exception automation based on that. And so maybe it's that tax needs to be allocated and we want to present that to someone on the tax team. Maybe it's that, we want to, if it's over a certain dollar limit from a certain vendor type, or maybe it's anytime that it's a non-PO invoice, we want to route it based on criteria. We can get really specific in those rules, and couple, I guess sometimes those rules might seem overwhelming to manage, and so that's where we can maybe use just approval limits based on hierarchy, using a user file from your HR system. And so there's a number of different ways. That's a long-winded answer. Hopefully that makes sense, but rules on rules on rules should be available and able to accommodate the most complex and frustrating aspects of the invoice process today.
Diane writes, if suppliers have many buyers coming at them asking them to use their portal, the coordination by the supplier to respond to all these buyers' portals will create a lot more work on their behalf. How do you convince suppliers to use your portal?
That's a good one. And one of the more common objections as we talk about portals is, will or how do I get suppliers to use this? And I would say portal fatigue is a reality. Um, Good visibility to the supplier is one way to organically get them into the portal to check that visibility, put the onus on them to reconcile and to do statement review themselves. And if they have a question about a PO invoice that maybe is delayed, and an automated response in your email that says, if you have a question about this type of issue, please go to the portal, and you have visibility that you can resolve there. And so sometimes there's some resistance in the initial submission of e-invoices that can be calmed by getting them in and getting the value of the visibility. And then they realize, oh, I can submit my invoices here. That's great. And then just simply over and above that, when we talk about e-invoice methods for submission that we find really effective, probably about half of all of our e-invoice or portal submitted invoices come from what we call file upload, where particularly with your suppliers who are submitting a larger volume of invoices each month, we set up, and our team works with them for the testing and the mapping of data and files and feeds to make sure that it's an automated transfer of that from their system to our portal. And so there's a number of ways to really get the adoption to increase, and for suppliers, depending on who and where they are and their level of tech capability or lack thereof, to get them comfortable.
Yeah. Janine wants to know, do supplier portals import setup data, supplier setup data, and attachments into the ERP system for us?
Yeah, we call that module our new supplier registration solution, and it captures their documentation, W-9. It does a check of their W-9 and their tax ID, runs it against 33 plus different lists to see, is this a business that we want to do business with, and then automatically would feed that into the ERP to be set up after going through an approval workflow piece where folks can look at the information that was entered and say, oh yes, this looks great, and we would like to do business with this potential supplier. But it really is reducing the amount of manual validation and setting up that supplier.
I know we I know we have a number of questions that we will not have time to answer. Unfortunately, we've reached the top of our hour. Brian or the iPayables team will respond to you directly after the webinar. And that will be our final word. Brian, thanks so much for an excellent presentation and for sharing your insights with us today. And thank you all for taking time out of your busy days to join us. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Jovi. Ms. Jovi.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. That's all the time we have for today's program. I just have a few quick housekeeping notes to go over before we officially close out. If you could please fill out the short evaluation form that will appear once you close the webinar, this will better help us serve your needs in future webinars. And as a reminder, the on-demand materials will be emailed to everyone within 2 business days. This will include a PDF of the slides as well as a link to the recording of today's presentation. Thank you again to Mark and Brian for a great presentation today, and thank you to all of our attendees for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. This webinar was brought to you by IOFM and sponsored by iPayables. Thank you all and have a great day.